this is Stephanie Ortega, and you're listening to the Remix Movement Podcast. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Remix Movement Podcast.
Hello.
This is Stephanie and Lewis bringing you back another episode.
Episode number 10.
Yes. Listen, we're on double digits now, Lewis. We need to take this serious business.
I think this is very serious.
I mean, we need to take this very seriously.
You don't sound serious.
It's so hard to give the introductions to every episode because after you hear every episode, you feel like all of them sound the same.
Really?
Yeah, you've never heard all the episodes in one shot?
No, not one shot.
So I always listen to our episodes before they're posted, and every time I listen to our beginnings, we always start with, "Hello, everybody. This is the Remix Movement Podcast."
Okay.
Even though they already heard that in the intro.
So are you going to change it for the next one?
I'm thinking about it. Guys, I need your DMs. I need your messages. Like, what are other ways to open up our podcast with every episode? Wow, that's really loud.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was me.
So we're still working on all our audio equipment, guys.
Yeah, it's not so easy. Like when you do it not so regularly.
Oh, what do you mean not so regularly?
I mean, it's like every other day. It's not every day.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But like I said, like we need like new innovative ways. And this is not the only thing other podcasts talk about. Every beginning of the podcast, like people are like, it's so hard to just start a podcast.
I'm sure it is.
Like some people just start a podcast with two people talking.
I believe that, yeah.
With the intro playing.
Oh, should we do that? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. We're trying things out, guys. So honestly, like, let us know in your DMs. Let us know in your comments because we're already in episode 10. And, you know, we want to keep innovating and we want to keep doing things great. We want to keep giving you good content. And we love your feedback. We just want to get better.
Yes, we do.
We do want to get better. All right. So going to last week's challenge. Last week's challenge was that we were supposed to look at ourselves in the mirror every time we saw us and say, "You are loved by God," and smile. So, Lewis, how was that experience for you?
It was amazing.
Yeah? Did you feel like your self-confidence boost, your self-love boost?
Definitely the self-love.
Right? Like, it just feels good. You know, we have to keep declaring things like that. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she's like, well, you read the Bible, but what's the point of reading the Bible if you don't talk about it?
That's a great point.
And I'm like, you know what? That's true. Like, we know that the Bible says that we're beautiful. We need to start speaking out. Hey, you're beautiful.
Yes.
So, like, this was a really good challenge. And you know what, guys? If you're listening and you're reading things in the Bible that you really like, don't just write it down. Declare and decree it over your life, right?
Did you do it in the morning every time?
Like, every time. Like, literally, I woke up and I would see myself and be like, you are loved by God.
You know, I think it would be more challenging if you did it at the end of your day.
Well, it was supposed to be throughout the day.
Okay. So I would have assumed that it's like you wake up and you look in the mirror, right?
Yes.
But at the end of the day, after you've gone through everything, can you still look in your mirror and ask yourself, do you feel loved by God? And smile about it.
Of course, I can. But if other people are having a hard time, keep doing it because there is power in your words.
Not only that, but I think that's like great evaluation for
everybody.
For you personally, because you're the one that's looking in the mirror.
Correct. So
and ask yourself, like, do you still feel confident knowing that you are loved by God?
That's really good, Lewis.
I think so.
It is really good.
It's
honestly,
it's definitely more challenging.
It was, yeah. Like, I feel like our challenges need to be a little bit more like heavyweight, you know? Like, we gave some like fluffy stuff, you know, like pray, make your goals, you know, kind of
those
that
are all
stuff.
good challenges.
They
though.
are, but I feel like now since we're in episode 10 and we're in double digits, like now we're getting to the grind of it.
Baby steps,
like,
baby steps. Not everybody's, a sprinter.
Correct. But it's episode 10, guys. So I'm hoping and praying that you guys have listened to episodes 1 through 9 and we're delivering 10 and that you guys are getting stronger. And instead of getting milk, now you guys want some real food.
Yeah. You know, and if you're a first time listener, and you don't fully understand the challenges or you're kind of just, weary about it.
That's okay.
That's okay. Don't feel stressed out about it.
Pray about it.
Just pray. Exactly.
And feel free to like reach out to family, friends, and other believers,
And
right?
reach out to us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So actually, now that we're on that point, if you reach out to me, my personal Instagram is at Stephanie A321
At Instagram.
at Instagram. Actually, if you are on Facebook, it's just Stephanie A Ortega.
Okay.
But if they're reaching out to you, what's your Instagram handler?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, well,
No, whoa. Don't be.
I'm gonna pull it out.
It's close to yours.
It's
You can find me where Stephanie is.
Oh,
So
he's being mysterious.
no, mysterious, no. But now we're just we're spreading me and not God.
Oh, there you go. But
Yeah.
God sees you. God is in you, and He works through you.
That is true.
So if you ever want to just connect with Lewis, you already know him. I have his cell phone number, or just go to my Instagram, and I tend to tag Lewis all the time,
All the time.
like all the time. Like this past like Valentine's Day, like he surprised me, and I posted a video. I thought it was very nice.
You're welcome.
It was really nice.
All right, so let's jump in.
Good call. All right, so today we are going to be talking about courage,
Courage.
and not Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I've never heard of that expression.
No, it's a cartoon. It used to be on Cartoon Networks.
Yep, nope.
Back in the 90s, 2000s.
This is gonna sound weird, but the first thing I think about courage is the lion.
Because the lions didn't have courage. The Lion and the Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
I don't know why that pops up in my head.
It makes sense. It's a good story. It's a good movie. But yes, the first thing I think of is Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Okay.
But what is courage, Lewis? Just to break the ice.
So courage is, I guess it's a character trait, and it's pretty much, putting yourself in a place, in a risky place, in front of injury or persecution, in front of people that might not share the same beliefs or truths. People in society, people in government, and pretty much you're standing firm in what you believe in, no matter the consequence. Pretty much against all odds.
That's really good. I just Googled it, and it said the strength to face any type of pain or grief, the ability to do something that frightens you. So the opposite of courage is fear.
Yeah.
The opposite of courage is cowardness.
Okay.
Okay. So, courage is basically what you need to be able to sustain something hard that you're going through, or a test or a trial, right? So like what you need to get you to the other side.
Yes.
To make it through out of there. So you said something really important. You said that courage can be risky.
Yeah.
How is courage risky?
Because you're pretty much standing on what you believe in, and what you believe in might not be everything that everybody else believes in.
That's a really good point, because us as believers of Christ, a lot of people tend not to agree with a lot of the things that we do believe in.
That is true.
Right? And like for us, the biggest thing that we can do is, in representing Christ, is to have the courage to speak up and to do what is right.
Yes.
And that takes a lot of courage, right?
It does, yep.
Like when we talked about testimonies in one of our old episodes, it's even harder when you go through like a battle and you go through a situation, and then you have to have the courage to be able to share your testimony.
Yeah.
And you need the courage to do that.
You do.
So,
Absolutely.
like despite maybe the consequences of, letting people know what God is doing in you, you still do it. Or despite, taking the risk of, making like, oh, if I do tell them, what are they going to think of? Like, despite their opinions, you still need to have the courage to be able to say your truth.
Yes.
Which is God's truth.
And it doesn't matter where you're at.
Correct.
Because there's always going to be like a division, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody has different opinions, and when we talk about politics, racism, gender equality and just different things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
Like there's always going to be division. You're right. Everybody does have a different opinion.
Yes.
But the only opinion that really matters to a believer, to somebody who knows Christ, is God's. Right?
Agree.
Because God is the whole reason why you're on this earth, and your relationship with Christ is the only real thing that should matter to you. The relationship you have with God, the courage you have to tell people that God lives in you, is how God works through you.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Absolutely.
All right. So we're going to read today from the book of Daniel. And we're not going to read through it because it's a really big passage. But basically, we're going to discuss Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 21.
Why Daniel?
Because Daniel is a guy that needed courage to be able to do a lot of the things that he did.
Okay.
Right? So, we all know that, Daniel was one of the 7 brothers that was not looked towards to, right?
Yep.
His dad did not think, he was going to be one of the guys that was going to come through, right? We've heard the story of how Daniel was taking care of the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
We heard the story of, is that Daniel or David, actually?
That was David.
Oh, you know what? I'm wrong. Daniel is the one who was in the lion's den.
Yes, he was.
That's what it is. Wow. David and Daniel, I got them all mixed up. Woo!
That happened to me too earlier.
For real?
Yeah. Thinking about Daniel.
David. Oh,
No.
Daniel.
I was thinking about Daniel and I kept calling him David.
Oh, okay. So Daniel is the one that got locked up in the lion's cave. That's what it is. And that happened later in his life. We're going to talk about Daniel at the beginning of his life.
Yes, we are.
Okay. So we're going to discuss Daniel chapter 1. And Louis, go ahead and let us know, all in all, what is taking place.
Okay. So
what is the setting? Make the picture story for us.
Okay, so we're pretty much in Babylon.
Babylon is the name of the city.
This is the name of the city, and
Okay.
we have a king. His name is pretty weird. It's Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar. Yep.
See, I always switch it up every time I say.
No, in the old times, in these biblical ages, they just name their kids all these things. But I know you don't know any Nebuchadnezzars now.
No. No, I don't know.
These are names that had meanings and references, and it was passed down from generation to generation.
Yes, pretty much.
So King Nebuchadnezzar has a kingdom in Babylon.
Yes, he does.
Okay.
And so, a group of guys, 4 guys, one being Daniel, are pretty much enlisted into the king's court.
Okay, and the guys are Israelites, right?
They are. They were brought over. They're smart guys, intelligent guys. Obviously, God had a plan for them.
Correct.
And the plan was to get them into the king's court, right?
Correct, in the palace. And the 3 guys, other than Daniel, is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Yes.
There you go.
Whose names were changed.
Yes, they had different names before that.
And I think to me, that's an important detail. And the reason why is because these guys are being brought into a whole new culture.
Into a whole new setting.
A whole new setting, sure.
Yeah.
And culture. And I'll tell you why culture. We'll get there, but you'll understand why when I say culture. Because we do that too in today's society. Bringing culture is a big influence in everything that we do and who we are. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so they're brought into the king's court. And they're asked to participate in the king's traditions. He's pretty much telling them, "Come eat with me. Come
and
be
they
a
were
part."
supposed to serve the king.
They are servants, right?
Yeah. Now keep in mind, guys, I do want to make a note that all 4 of these guys, Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were coming from royal families in Israel. They knew how to read, they knew how to write, they knew the language, they knew the literature. So these are some smart guys, right? And they were selected from the chief executive of the king to go into the king's palace. So they were removed from their homeland to like where the traditions were, all the Israelites, everything that they were able to worship God together freely. They were able, to be together freely after, Moses was able to, free them and get through all of their customs and beliefs. And then they were put into the king's palace, where all of a sudden Lewis is going to talk about how like the king had a set of customs that he only knew. Like,
That's right.
The king was not a believer of Christ. He literally was just the king of Israel, of Babylon. And he like, the only thing he knew was, I am the highest person. I am the one that people are supposed to pray and worship towards.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay, so pretty much they were brought, Daniel and the 3 other guys, they were brought into the courts. And in the passage that we're referring to, which you'll find in 1 Daniel chapter 1 to 21, you'll read that they're pretty much being told, like, hey, this is what you're going to do in my court, and this is the culture. This is what we eat.
So it's kind of like a training process.
Exactly.
Like, forget everything that you were told when you were living over there. You're coming into a whole new place. This is a royal family, and you need to be on your best behaviors. We're going to train you on what you can eat, what you can drink, what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a big detail. And it's pretty, it goes pretty deep, just because Daniel he already understands that he has a purpose for his life.
Correct.
In God's kingdom. And the king is saying, hey, you're going to have to eat this. This is the food that we eat. You're going to be eating this. And Daniel's like, whoa. Hold on now. I have my own beliefs. Let me tell you, let's work this out. Right. And so they're like, okay, that, what suggestion do you have? And Daniel's like, yo, I'm gonna eat this, and you're gonna compare me to the other guys. Okay. And then let's see who lasts longer.
Yeah, he says specifically, I want to only eat vegetables for 10 days. That's what he says.
Right.
So he says, I'm going to eat vegetables for 10 days. I'm going to put you to the test. And if you compare me to the other guys that you already have existing in the king's service that are eating all of their food, and I do want to mention this also. So in the king's palace, they had animals, right? All different types of animals. They had lots of money and riches. So they used all these extravagant perfumes and oils. They had grains. They had fruits. They indulged themselves. And if you had a lot of money, you took pride in what you ate. Okay. Yes. So like the king's palace was like, if I am the head macho man and I'm the one who's in charge of everything, I want to look good. So I want to eat good. Right?
That's right.
But you know what? In Leviticus 11, it talks about God created rules and customs of the Israelites of what they can eat and what they drink. And, there were certain animals that they were allowed to eat and certain animals that they were not allowed. And the reason why God put those rules was so that they can be able to show respect for who God was.
That's right. It was God's diet plan.
Exactly. Like there was a purpose in why God said, these are unclean food and this is clean food. But all of those rules kind of got, disassociated the moment that they got put into the king's palace.
Yeah.
And they were like, what? Why is this kid? Because again, they were all young boys.
They were teenagers. Yeah.
Like, why is this kid challenging the way we do things? And they wanted to prove a point too. So you got to think about it in both roles.
Well, yeah, they were standing their ground.
Exactly.
So they had conviction of who they needed to obey. And that takes a lot of courage, especially to come before somebody that has authority over you. And to be able to tell them, hey, you know what? This is what I believe. And you're going to see the results.
That took a lot of courage.
It took a lot of courage. And that's risky because he literally risked his life to avoid compromising God's plan for his life.
Exactly.
So that was a huge move.
So what happened, Lewis?
Well, after the 10 days, they looked at Daniel and the 3 other guys, and they were looking ripped, like they were healthier.
They looked healthier,
right,
and more nurturing.
Yes.
More nourished than the young men who had already been there and been eating the court's food. Like the guard literally was like shocked because, again, the guards are thinking, oh, okay, we've been doing this for this many years. Go ahead and try to prove your point, right?
That's right.
And Daniel had the courage and the belief and the trust in God to be able to say, okay, I see you. Let's go ahead and let's do this.
Yeah.
So he did it, and then he looked even better. And
That's
like
right.
you said, like it's like comparing, you know, like when they have before and after pictures of when you're going through a health program.
Sure.
So like, and one of the photos, like you might see like a woman who's like really sad, a little overweight and not happy. You could tell in her face and the way she like, you know, stands. And then in the after picture,
confidence.
Yeah, and the after picture, you see like a more confident woman.
Yep.
She looks a lot stronger. She has a smile on her face. So like this is what we see Daniel and the guys going through.
Right.
Right? And then like it even says that the guard took away their choice of food and wine, and they went ahead and they continued to do the customs that Daniel had.
Yep.
Because they were like, well, if it worked for him, why can't it work for everybody else?
Exactly.
So he's already making moves and waves thanks to the courage that he had.
Yep. And in his obedience, God was able to go ahead and continue to work in him, and eventually gave the four guys, more wisdom,
A higher status.
a higher status, and even gave Daniel the what is it? The gift of to read visions and
to
dreams.
interpret visions and dreams.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So in his state of courage, God recognized that and was able to continue, working in Daniel, to complete his purpose, right? And so he was faced with a lot of temptation. He was faced with the cultural differences, and he was still able to stay in line with what he believed, in a risky setting, which is huge, and which is something that we should strive to do. Also, have a little courage, or a lot of courage, to continue the race.
Yeah, I mean, he remained faithful to God. You know, like if we saw this in a different place and it wasn't Daniel and it wasn't these three guys, and we saw it as just like, let's say, kind of like peer pressure, right? So like, let's say you're with a bunch of friends, you went to a party and you see like a few of the people in the corner are like smoking.
Right.
And you've never smoked before. And
that's a culture shock.
That's a culture shock. So you have to think to yourself, do I do it because now I'm going to be a part of the crew, or do I have the courage to walk away?
Right. And that's where the temptation
comes. Is. And like, that's what we're saying, guys. Like, you need to know like where you stand and your beliefs with God. Are you going to be one that's just going to be like everybody else and get like stuck in the temptation and fill a void? Or are you going to stand up for your beliefs and stand up for Christ and be faithful and take the courage to not do it? Sometimes the most courageous thing that you can do is walk away from a situation.
Yes.
You know, it's not just about, okay, I need to have the courage to face somebody and tell them, hey, I don't like you. Like, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is there's going to be certain things that you're going to face in your life. And as you get older, you know, your temptations and your responsibilities are going to change. But you have to ask yourself, like, is this a situation where I can go ahead and surpass it with courage?
Right.
Like, that's a really good point that, you know, Daniel was able to address. Daniel was like, hey, I know you did things a certain way here, but because I was taken out of my home, I want to keep doing the things that I was doing before, and that's in God's ways. And he did that.
Yes, he did.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's funny too is that it says also that Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and Daniel, like after this very moment, God was able to use them in their expanding their knowledge and their wisdom, and the king was even able to use the gifts that God gave them. So like later on in the story of Daniel, we hear King Nebuchadnezzar had like a dream, and the only person who can interpret his dream was who? Daniel. And it comes back to this moment where like Daniel made a name for himself, but he also made a name for God. And God was recognized through his courage.
That's right. So, courage is one of those traits that God obviously recognizes,
and he honors it, and he blesses you.
Absolutely.
And he gives you more.
Yeah. So whenever you're walking into a new job or you're, brand new kid in school, new class, whatever it is, stay firm in what you believe in.
Yes.
Recognizing that God is working. Exactly. God is behind the scenes and he's making moves for you, with you.
Amen.
And it can be risky. It can feel like there's a lot of pressure to switch sides. But you have to keep your faith strong and stay motivated to work in God's kingdom.
And don't let the fear of being alone stop you. Because you know what? Like, you're not going to be alone in your courage. God is going to be there with you.
Yes.
It just reminds me, another story later you guys can read about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego when they were put into a fiery furnace.
That's right.
By the same king, King Nebuchadnezzar.
The same guy.
Just because they didn't want to bow down to him. And they still took the courage to say, hey, my God is bigger, my God is greater, and I'm not going to serve anybody else who's not my God. You know what's
another point that I find interesting? If you keep reading, like going into the next chapter where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, Daniel was able to do the impossible. He made it possible with God's help, and I think that's something to acknowledge, because what we find impossible, God makes possible.
Yes, and anything is possible.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that is not unattainable or unreachable.
Right.
With God.
That's so true, and that all started with standing in what he believed in.
Yeah, and being able to say yes.
To get right.
Being able to say yes, because honestly, guys, the power of a yes needs your courage to ignite it. It's kind of like a match, right? So like if God tells you, and sometimes he'll do it, God at times will tell you to do things that you might seem that are difficult, right? So like in the middle of praise and worship, you can be to yourself praising God, and you'll feel like God telling you, go to this person and pray, right? And then you have to say, am I going to do it or am I not going to do it? And you need to be able to have the courage in Christ to believe that there's a purpose as to why God asked you to do that. And then once you take that courage and you give him a yes, like, you don't know how you can change lives with your courage. Like, maybe God wanted you to pray for that person in that moment because that person at that moment thought that once he left church, like, he was going to do something that was going to harm him. You know what I mean? Like, like you need to have the power to say yes, the faith to have the courage and move. Just like you said, you got to have the courage to move and let God use you. Like,
right.
Say yes. Like, be a Daniel at your job. Be a Daniel at your school. Be a Daniel at your church. Like, stand up for what you believe in. Yes. Which comes down to the challenge.
What is the challenge, Stephanie?
All right. So the challenge for this week is going to be, ask yourself, is it here? I'm sorry. Ask yourself where you stand in your beliefs when a tough situation arises or when a temptation comes about, okay? And pray that God can continue to give you the courage that you need for that.
That's awesome. That's an awesome challenge.
That's really good. This is going to make you, like you said, reevaluate yourself and like find out like what areas do you feel like you need more courage in? Like, what areas do you feel like, maybe I don't stand up for this particular thing because I'm scared of this.
Right.
And you can cancel out your fear and you can pray, God, I need the courage to do this. So it's going to sound weird, but it's kind of like this, right? When a guy asks a girl to be their girlfriend or boyfriend, they need the courage to ask her.
Right.
And they have to plan out how they're going to ask her.
Yes.
Right? So like some guys, depending on your age, if you're like younger, will like pass a note and says, do you want to be my boyfriend or my girlfriend? Check yes or no. But like some other guys are a little bit more romantic and they like want to do a dinner and a date and like it's a whole shebang, but you still needed the courage to do it.
Yeah, it took some effort.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, once you have that courage, you reap a blessing. like you reap the ability to call this girl that you really like your girlfriend.
Hopefully, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. Like, ask yourself, like, what areas of your life you need to take a stand in, and you need courage. Okay?
All right. Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to episode 11.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having the courage to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. We're going to do this.
We're doing this right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Remix Movement for more updates. Send us a DM with your feedback, questions, and any topics that you would like to hear in any of our future episodes. Thank you, and God bless.